Welcome to the Haney Biz Project with Mark Haney. Mark is a serial investorpreneur and the chief dreaming officer of the Haney Biz Companies. He's working tirelessly to ignite the entrepreneurial revolution and share the inspiring stories of the region's most influential leaders. Coming to you from the Marquee Media Studio, here's Mark Haney.
All right. Welcome to the Haney Biz Project. We are on a mission to ignite the entrepreneurial revolution right here in our hometown of Sacramento, right? We tell the stories of winning, the good stories, the stories of breakthrough moments. You know, I'm here with my main man, Marcus Haney. How you doing, Marcus? You hanging or banging?
I am banging. Fired up to be here today. Can't wait to hear the stories of our upcoming guests.
Well, yeah, we have two awesome guests today, and we're going to be talking about the entrepreneurial revolution, right? Igniting it, and that's the mission of this show. We're trying to help entrepreneurs to get over that hump. We do that through storytelling. Through these stories, entrepreneurs or people who are building businesses, they always run into these challenges, right? And getting through those challenges, especially when you feel alone, is not so easy. So I think when we hear the stories of winning, people who have faced, looked in the eye of the tiger and found a way to tame that son of a gun, people who have done that, those are the most inspirational stories. We're going to be talking about that today, Marcus.
Well, absolutely. I think we talk about 90% of businesses fail because people just end up quitting because they run into that tough time and don't know where to turn, don't know who to go to. But, luckily we started this Haney Biz Project radio show to share the stories to help give folks an opportunity to learn from, guys that are coming up to say, hey, you can do it too.
The failure rate of small business is too high. I think maybe it is 90% that fail in that first 5 years or so, Marcus. But the ones that have that breakthrough moment, that get themselves over the hump, if you will, those are the most inspirational stories. The ones that get over the hump and go on to build $50, $100 million companies, that creates opportunity. That creates opportunity for our families, our friends, our hometown of Sacramento, and that's what we're doing today. And I'm in a good mood today. Today we have some.
Thank God.
We have. I am in it. The stock market seems to be bouncing back.
Yeah.
We seem to be having. It looks like the economy is going to be okay. I'm just feeling confident right now. How about you?
Yeah, feeling very confident. Haney Industrial Supply out there banging, making some impact in the world. But I want to hear a little bit about, you say that's your mission a little bit, right, to provide the entrepreneurial revolution here.
Yeah, how do we do that? Well, we'll talk about that a little later in the show, but I think through the stories for sure here at the Haney Biz Project, but we're also investors, right? So I do a little bit of investing myself, so I like to invest in those rock star entrepreneurs. But we also have Haney Biz here. We go hands-on and we help those entrepreneurs to actually get over the hump. So that's what we're doing. Everybody's got to do their part. Marcus, you are the Marine entrepreneur, right? So you are building a business, but you're in Marine Corps. You were in the Marine Corps, fought for our country, and I always think, what could I do, right? If you're out there fighting for our country, okay, maybe I can help a couple small business guys along the way. So try to do my part.
What you're doing, right?
I am
Haney Biz hands-on.
We are doing some of that here, and I'm excited. I'm proud of what we're doing, and I have partners that help me to do this, starting with Marquee Media, right? So last night I'm at the Kings game. And I got front row at the Kings game last night. I'm with Tom Candris, and we're sitting next to Reggie Theus, right?
Okay,
He's like an old Kings guy. And so Uriah Faber's down there, and some of my other buddies from EO are down there in the front row, and we're all coming up and talking and everything. And Reggie Theus says to Tom, "Hey, what's with this guy? Is he famous or what?"
Reggie said that?
And I'm like, "Hey, thank you, Marquee Media. Thank you for making me famous. Thank you for putting me on the billboards." So after we left at halftime, we went up to the loft and started hanging out with our friends and having a few pops. And, well, at the end, I had another Marquee Media moment. So the waitress comes up to me at the end and says, "Mark, can I have your autograph?"
Whoa.
And I'm like, "Whoa, thank you, Marquee Media." Then she handed me the bar tab, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, Candris, you did it again to me. How did that happen?" Well, coming up on the show today, we're going to be talking about those breakthrough moments, about how people end up finding a way to get themselves a little bit famous. Coming up on the show, later in the show, we are going to meet the man who built a company that's helping develop a solution to contact sports, Mr. John Ralston of Protxx. But coming up after the break, we're going to meet the founder of Black Angel Tech Fund, Kwame Anku. Join the revolution at HaneyBiz.com, brought to you courtesy of Apex Appraisal Services. This is the Haney Biz Project.
Now back to Marquee Media Studio and the Haney Biz Project with your host, Mark Haney.
All right. Welcome back to the Haney Biz Project, brought to you courtesy of Comstock Magazine and California Backyard. I'm Mark Haney. And today, I have the privilege of being joined by the father of the years, who I call him, Kwame Anku, the founder of Black Angel Tech Fund. How you doing, Kwame?
I'm amazing. Good morning. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, too. And I call you Father of the Year because every time I see you, you seem to be with this young man who is jumping in, and it's like you're always taking your son to work.
Absolutely. Well, I found that most of the principles about success in business, I didn't learn until I was like in my 30s. So I made a decision before I was a father to be able to teach basically everything that I knew that was important into my child before he or she was 10. Mm-hmm. And then lo and behold, I had a beautiful young boy. Yeah. And I've really committed myself to teaching him the basic principles of success, of business, of life at an early age. So that's where you see that energy and that enthusiasm.
Well, it's hard to believe you're that much over 30. However, your resume and your success is that of somebody who is an older man. But so thinking about Black Angel Tech Fund, if you don't mind, give us an overview of your business and what you've done, and take us through the journey.
Sure. In terms of my entrepreneurial journey, or specifically the
Let's
Black
go
Angel
both.
Tech Fund?
Let's go both.
Yeah. Well, we'll start present. We'll jump back. So Black Angel Tech Fund is basically an early stage investment fund. We're looking for exciting, planet-changing African American technology entrepreneurs. There's really been a disparity in terms of them being able to get funding and financing in the tech industry. Okay. Less than 1% of all the VC money typically goes to African Americans. So a group of us that went to Stanford, I graduated in '94. We said, hey, we went to the school that gave the world Google and LinkedIn and PayPal and Palantir and all these amazing planet-changing companies. Why don't we just leverage our networks, our access to capital, our wisdom, our success to be able to create a fund and then leverage our networks from Stanford to do the same thing.
So go ahead.
Yeah, so that's what we do in terms of the fund. And then, my entrepreneurial journey really started. I always like to start with my father. When you hear my name, Kwame Anku, it sounds like an African name, but of course I don't have the African accent. But that's because my father's from Ghana, and my father was born in a village with no running water, no electricity. At the time he was born, the country was still colonized. And that young man walking to school with no shoes for miles at a time somehow was able to get a scholarship to the United States for undergrad. Went to Cornell Medical School and became a world-renowned oncologist and hematologist, put a kid through Cal, Stanford, and Columbia. So that was the model that I had as a child, that one, anything is possible in this country. Two, if you just focus particularly and you have a business and you're an owner, you can transform generations and you can transform lives. And today, my father's almost 80 and is one of the largest landholders in the country of Ghana today. Okay. And so we've got incredible businesses that we do as a family in Ghana, in real estate and in ag tech and in other businesses. So that was really the model that I had. And so ever since I was a young person, I never saw my dad working for somebody else.
Wow.
So when as soon as I graduated, I started a business, started a production company. I've been a public speaker and been invited to speak all over the country. I've been a consultant. I've done all kinds of different things. And I think I've literally had a job before working at Black Angel Tech Fund for like 6 months, where I was literally on salary. Everything else was 1099.
It's amazing how our philosophies are developed at such a young age, and how our parents or our role models at those early ages, they shape us. And you're doing that now with your son, too, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's funny because I didn't actually make the connection until you just said that, right? So like when I was a kid, I would go visit my dad at work, and on the door it said, Vincent Anku, MD, Inc. So he owned the business. So I was 5 when my dad first started. He didn't have enough money to hire a secretary. So my mom was his part-time secretary. And I remember being a kid doing the files and sharpening the pencils at the office. But the reality is, as a young child, I'm looking at my dad. He owned the business. And that's all I ever saw. So he never talked about his boss because he was the boss, right? And when I was 10, I started doing the check registers for him. And I was like his little assistant accountant. So at 10 years old, I was literally on the equivalent of QuickBooks back in the 80s, right? And I was learning about, keeping track of the money and working with my mom to do all the balancing and all that good stuff.
Amazing.
So I didn't make the connection.
That led you to this incredible career that is now you're doing the Black Angel Tech Fund. And obviously there's a need, but how did you decide to start the fund?
Yeah, so, So this is crazy. At the time, I was actually working with the legendary rock star Prince. And Prince, as you know, he was an iconic musician and an artist, groundbreaking in so many levels. But he was always emphatic again about the power of ownership. You know, most of the early artists back in the day, they were signing record contracts. They were making a lot of money, but they didn't own the products and the masters, if you will, of recordings. So that was something that was really important to him. So having a chance to work closely with him was a life-changing experience.
I can only imagine.
As a mentor, as a friend, he was just really generous, an amazing business person. And so at the time, we were really looking for solutions, again, with this disparity that less than 2% in this incredible technology industry, but less than 2% of the employees at the Googles and the Facebooks are African American.
Okay.
And so basically we're saying, one, how can we help solve that problem?
You bet.
And two, how can we, and I love your whole idea of igniting the entrepreneurial revolution, right? When I think of Google, they employ over 100,000 people, but that whole company was started by 2 people.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just the power of 2. Hewlett-Packard started by 2 people. Apple, 2 people, right?
And look what they become.
That's exactly. And so in all of those companies, right, they had people, just like yourself as an investor, who saw their vision, believed in them, invested capital, and then leveraged their networks to help to grow and cultivate those companies. So we basically were inspired by that. And then the other thing, too, is like when you're young, you're excited, you got a bunch of ideas, you got stuff to prove. You know, I'm almost 46. And I have over 20 years of life experience, of networks, of access points. I've learned a lot. And so now I'm more excited not about just having my own business, which I have, but I'm really excited about investing into these young entrepreneurs and being able to share the wisdom that I have, the lessons that I've learned, and get them connected to the people that I've got relationships with to help them to
Igniting
grow.
the entrepreneurial revolution for the African American here. And it's amazing that that there's still such this, I guess, disparity in opportunity. You're helping, I guess, elevate that opportunity.
Absolutely, and I love the word opportunity, right? So I learned from a mentor of mine. He said a small mind focuses on a problem, right? People commiserating about the problems. He said a big mind focuses on a solution, and that's good because we're not just commiserating and complaining. But he said a genius mind sees the opportunity that lies in the problem, right? And so Silicon Valley and technology is an industry that's built on genius. It doesn't mean high IQ. Yeah. It means people who see problems but see there's an opportunity there. Right? And so that's really what we're committed to, and that's what then levels the playing field. Yes. And what I love to say, it balances the equation.
Without a doubt. Talk to us about some of the opportunities that you've helped create.
Sure.
It's a success story.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, and I love the fact that we focused on our hometown of Sacramento, right? The capital city of the 7th largest economy in the world,
baby.
Right?
Sacktown.
So I'll tell you a great story. There's a young woman who's the founder and CEO of a virtual reality company called Seek VR. Now, this is an African woman born in New York, raised in Ghana, incredible background, U.S. Air Force veteran, double E and a master's degree from Georgia Tech in computer science, electrical engineering. And she's literally one of the global pioneers of virtual reality. Not only virtual reality headsets, we're talking about creating a portal, Netflix for VR, if you will, and she has a full production studio, and it's a global company. So she had a really tough time raising capital. When we met her, she'd raised about $800,000. That sounds like a lot of money, but in this space, the average amount is about $300 million.
Okay.
So what she didn't have was the access point. So we came in, not only did we make the investment, but much more importantly, we got her connected to other investors.
Yes.
Right?
Sometimes if one person begins to believe in you or one group believes in you, it can be like almost the turning point, the breakthrough moment.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was doing a fireside chat with her, much like this, a few weeks ago at Stanford, and we were really honored and humbled. She literally said what you said. She said, that was the breaking point for me as a businesswoman, and we helped to get her over the gap. And then it was bringing her to Sacramento to meet the investor community out here and the entrepreneur community out here. 2 incredible things happened. Number 1, she decided to relocate the company from Miami to Sacramento.
Wow.
And number 2, she was connected to an investor community here, which ultimately led to $1 million additional investment in her company. Nice. And she's actually in Europe as we speak, working with that team, building out the European side of the business.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
I love how you brought her to our hometown,
Absolutely.
right? So that is so cool to hear. So thinking about choosing someone like her to invest in? I always say I like to invest in rock star entrepreneurs, people who can make the molecules move. What did you see in her, or what do you look for in investment when you look at the team and the entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, to make it simple, I would say really two things is passion. Well, I would say three things: vision, passion, and track record.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, vision, it's something big, that we're going to change the world. I've got an idea that can literally transform the planet. That's the vision.
Okay.
The passion is, it's 20 hours a day. Every time you talk to them, they're moving. I got ideas. Okay, we're going to do it this way. They're always driven. They're making it happen, right? But also track record. Because what does that mean? One, they've created businesses before.
Yes.
Two, they've made mistakes and failed. They've overcome. They know what the entrepreneurial slog is, and they're still here, and they're still energized with their new vision. So this woman in particular, she had worked for Boeing, and she literally developed the digital cinema system. That's the system that bounces movies off of satellites into movie theaters around the country.
Okay.
She's one of 4 people on that patent. Now, Boeing took that whole division and sold it off for $3.2 billion. So she knows how to run a team of over 200 people. She knows how to build a global enterprise. She understands technology. She's an engineer as well as a business person. So what did we see? We saw vision. I'm going to create a next level virtual reality, metaverses that'll do education, that'll do entertainment, that'll bring people all over the world, and I'm going to build that, right? She's passion. She's driven and excited and always on the go. And then the track record. Those were the elements that we saw that got us excited about her.
Love it. As we before we go to break, we don't have a minute left. But any advice to entrepreneurs who are thinking they've got that passion, they don't quite have the experience yet, but they've got the passion. How do you jump in the game in some form?
Well, two really quick and simple things. Number one, the fact that they're listening to shows like this is really the breakthrough. There's so much amazing stuff out there to listen to learn. But the second thing is to surround yourself with your own personal board of directors, your own advisory board. These are folks that have experienced, they're seasoned, they've done what you want to do, they've gone where you want to go, they believe in you, and those people will help you to navigate and make important critical decisions correctly at the early onset of your journey and of your business.
Create your own advisory board. Kwame, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for what you do for our hometown of Sacramento and the African American community specifically. I'm going to ask you to stick around if you want to hear our next guest, because you and I were there when he pitched last time at the Kings Capitalize, and he actually came away with the W. Coming up after the break, we will meet the guy who is saving our full contact sport of football, in my mind. Mr. John Ralston of Protxx is in the house. Join the revolution at handybiz.com, courtesy of Audi Rocklin and the DCA Capital men and women of DCA. This is the Haney Biz Project.
Welcome back to the Marquee Media Studio with Mark Haney, igniting the entrepreneurial revolution with the Haney Biz Project.
Welcome back to the Haney Biz Project, courtesy of Hub International and Legion AVS. I'm Mark Haney, and I'm here with a man who I am claiming is going to save my favorite sport of football. That may be an exaggeration. It may not be, but as a man who's building a company, a solution to keep contact sports a lot more safe, Mr. John Ralston of Protxx. How you doing, John?
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
Am I exaggerating? Tell us about what you're doing. I don't know if I'm exaggerating, but I see sports like football, they're under attack because of the concussion issue.
It's only a slight exaggeration.
Okay.
And it's an important problem. Our goal really is to, starting with our own kids, to do our best to reverse this pretty significant decline in participation. A lot of parents, a lot of kids themselves are concerned about the risks of head injuries.
Yes.
And those are realistic concerns, and the lack of real credible solutions has led parents to throw up their arms and say, you know what, I think it's the robotics club for my kid.
You know, I wish they had this when I was a kid, because I probably would be a little different now, because I played a lot of football and I crashed my head. Back then, we led with our head, we'd crash with our heads, and that was how we were taught. Now we're teaching a more protective way of playing the game or playing sports, but still these injuries are happening, but sometimes we don't notice them.
That's a big part of the challenge. And you and me both, when we were kids, I grew up in a part of Canada where when you turned 10, you put on your skates and you start body checking. And that was a rite of passage. And the first game where you managed to knock a player down and stay standing yourself, you got a standing ovation from your parents and the benches, your coaches, the rest of the team. But you got bigger, you got heavier, the hits got harder, and occasionally you didn't get up quite so quickly. You saw stars. I went to a fairly rural high school where if you played hockey or any other sport, you had to play football. And because we were a small school, you played both ways. And if you were a skilled position on one end of the field, you were a lineman on the other end.
That's
of
a
the field.
lot of contact. So talk to us about your product. How does your product address the concussion issue?
So years later, it happens to your own kid. So about 3 years ago, my youngest daughter, youngest of three, who played on a very competitive soccer team, had back-to-back concussions. The second of which happened right in front of my wife and I and all the parents. And she rolled over the back of a much larger defender and was briefly suspended, feet up, head down, and literally bounced off the AstroTurf. Collapsed into a pile, and my wife screamed, all the other moms screamed, and we were briefly in shock. Kids are robust. She got on her knees, got on her hands. She stood up, shook her head, started running back towards the play, and then buckled over and barfed. And was in rough shape for a week or so. And that was the second of two concussions. And my wife and I found ourselves, like a lot of parents these days, we discovered, with a pediatric neurologist. And I'll never forget the woman's words. She looked at us, she said, the problem with concussions is, in the absence of a record of the physical impact at the time of the injury, the best we can do is wait for some symptoms to emerge. And then based on the symptoms, we can then begin to guess what the injury might have been.
Okay.
And as an engineer and as a parent and as an entrepreneur, it struck me that there's an opportunity there. And that's it's certainly not the best we can do. And then as we dug in and looked at the problem, it became clear that concussions were very likely just the tip of the iceberg as well. If you look at not just football, not just hockey, not just soccer and lacrosse and basketball and wrestling and equestrian and skateboarding and BMX cycling, all those fun things that we did as kids and we want our kids to keep doing. If you look closely and begin putting sensors on the athlete's head, just to answer the question, what kind of motion is going on? Okay, so you realize that even the routine stuff is actually causing a little bit of damage, and if you don't intervene quickly enough, that'll go from being sort of transient deformation of neural tissues to permanent death of neural tissues, and you really want to avoid that.
So yeah, those repeated concussions are horrible, or the head trauma is horrible. I want to talk a little bit about your product specifically. I've seen it, but to describe it on the radio, we may have to get into a little bit of detail. It's something that actually it's a sensor that goes on your head.
It is.
Okay.
And as Californians,
Marcus has brought over your blue head here. It's your model.
Our Blue Man Group.
Yes.
Courtesy of my colleague.
And I'm going to put my EO hat over here. I have my black. I have a head. It's funny if you're watching this on Facebook Live or if you're you see this on YouTube, you can see that I have a head in my office here in Mark Tank in the Marquee Media that looks very similar to your blue head, except for you guys got a little longer neck. Okay, describe that thing that's behind the ear.
So as Californians, we all appreciate the concept of a seismometer, and the Protxx sensor is really just a very sensitive seismometer for the brain. Okay. And it does two things. First of all, it functions as a head impact dosimeter.
It kind of looks like a hearing aid, like a really discreet hearing aid.
The battery in this thing is actually the most widely deployed battery inside hearing aids. Okay. Which tells you it's very safe. If you can put that in your ear, you can put it behind your ear. Gotcha. And that's, safety is critical what we're doing. But that device, first and foremost, puts the equivalent of an MRI machine behind the athlete's ear. Okay. And it monitors the accumulation of all those little motions of the head, all the routine stuff, right? Subconcussive impacts. Okay. So long before, or even if a concussion never occurs, we're monitoring the routine motion of the head. And we can tell you when you're approaching the threshold where you're likely going to transition from transient deformation of neural tissues, bending, stretching, torquing, to permanent damage.
So that information is transferred from the hearing aid style piece on the ear
From the dosimeter.
to decimeter, okay, and to the something that's that the coaching staff holds on to, or
So
the
now
medical
we've
staff?
got the athletic trainer, a coach
Okay.
on the sideline, the supervisory personnel are actually seeing that data for the entire team. And now, for the first time, you have the opportunity to intervene on the prevention end. So we don't wait like every other solution.
Don't wait till your
in this
daughter's
business.
throwing up on the ground.
We don't wait until a concussion has happened and sell you a diagnosis to tell you how severe the symptoms are. We intervene to get most athletes off the field before the damage becomes permanent. And that's function number one.
Yeah.
The second device, still behind the athlete's ear, now also functions as a precision balance monitor. So we can actually take, and now we simply have the athlete stand perfectly still, 30 seconds with their eyes open, 30 seconds with their eyes closed. So we see the difference between an athlete with and without the visual feedback. And we can see minor, very microscopic changes in their balance. As they try to stand still, they're actually shaking back and forth, side to side, as their musculoskeletal system, their lumbar system, their vestibular, their balance system, their visual system, it all integrates into neural processing to try and keep you upright and perfectly balanced, but you're actually moving around. We measure those microscopic changes. We can actually see, we can quantify that a very important physiological change that comes from all those subconcussive impacts. We can see the changes in your microscopic balance. We can actually tease out of that information are the hopefully transient changes you've suffered predominantly in neural tissues?
Yeah.
Or are they predominantly in the balance organs of the inner ear? Or do you actually have an orthopedic injury?
So
we do two things. We get the athlete off the field,
Yes.
and then we also triage them. We say, look, the next step for this athlete is athletic trainer to figure out if you have an orthopedic injury, physical therapist to figure out if you might have a balance injury, or you got to go see your neurologist. You might need a neural workup.
Without a doubt. As a football coach, right, I coach a lot of football, and we were faced with those decisions about, get back in the game, suck it up, and those kind of things, because there's times when we're just tired as young, especially when you're working with younger players. Like, is this a desire issue or is this an injury issue? And you're stuck, I think, as a football coach, trying to play doctor, if you will, playing with this young person's life. It was tough for me to do that, and I imagine this could be very helpful, even at the youth age or the high school age.
I mean, playing with their life and their career.
Yes.
And face it, most young athletes they're not going to become professionals. The millions of youngsters that play sports, only 1,200 of those, 1,400 turn into NFL players, NBA players, NHL players. The rest of them go on and want to have happy, healthy careers. They need their brains, right? And the last thing you want to do as a coach is have the responsibility of hopefully spotting that as it happens on the field and intervening, right? So we automate that process for you.
Well, in building this business, you created a product that I think a lot of us would probably say you have no competition, right? In many businesses, they're very similar and they compete and they're innovative in their certain way to be better than one another. But there is no competition for this. Am I right?
There is lots of competition.
Oh, there is.
There's a big range of neurocognitive assessment tools out there that, unfortunately, they're restricted to waiting until a concussion happens and then diagnosing the severity of the symptoms afterwards. So we're clearly addressing the bigger issue of the subconcussive injuries. There are sensors in helmets, but they suffer from the fact that a helmet moves radically differently than the head inside. There are sensors in mouth guards. They suffer from the fact that an athlete's first thing they do when you give them a mouth guard is they chew on it, right? And again, all those devices, they're focused on that traditional problem of, we'd like to figure out if that athlete has had a concussion. And we've shown is no. You want to figure out if that athlete is about to have potential brain damage and intervene. And the surprising thing is we find you end up removing a lot more athletes for short periods of time to make sure that there's only transient changes that go away so they can safely return to play. So that 20 years later, they're not subjects of slicing, dicing the brain to show they've got chronic traumatic
You and
encephalopathy.
I were joking before the show that I didn't know if I could contain you to your segment here, and we look like we are going to go along. So I have one last question. You and I know each other from the investment community. You have pitched at I emceed the five-star bank tank. Kwame and I were judges at King's Capitalize. You guys won that. What stage is the company in, and where are you going from here?
So it takes a city to raise a company, and we're excited to be setting up shop here in Sacramento because of all the things you mentioned. There's an awesome business community. We've got the greater Sacramento economic community. We got the mayor's office with a chief innovation officer who gets it. We got the Kings. We got the FC Republic. We got Haney Business. And
love it.
as we emerge from having proven the science and prototype the product, to actually doing larger scale commercial launches. We found a home in Sacramento to house our first big commercial pilot. They're rolling out this summer with thousands of athletes and the support
Nice.
of the likes of the Sutter Healths, the Dignity Healths, the Kaiser Permanente. My business partner here, Rick Spencer, who's our chief revenue officer, Sacramento-based himself, actually Rocklin-based himself.
Yes.
Has done an awesome job of corralling all those organizations, as well as high schools and UC Davis and all the collegiate sporting organizations who they share our interest in keeping the kids playing, but making it a lot safer.
Well, John, I want to thank you for sharing your story, coming on the show, helping save the sport that I love, and all contact sports, and these young people's head injuries becoming such a problem. Again, thank you for what you're doing here in Sacramento and building this business. When we return, I will be rejoined by Marcus Haney. We'll talk a little bit more about the entrepreneurial revolution and what it might mean to somebody listening to the show today. Join the revolution at HaneyBiz.com, courtesy of Chicago Fire and law firm Greenberg Troy. This is the Haney Biz Project.
And now, back to the Haney Biz Project with investorpreneur Mark Haney, coming to you from the Marquee Media Studio.
Welcome back to the Haney Biz Project, brought to you courtesy of accounting firm Clifton Larson Allen. I'm Mark Haney, and I'm rejoined by Marcus Haney. It's been a great show, Marcus. We talked a little bit about football, a sport that you and I both love. And sometimes entrepreneurship is kind of a full contact sport. Am I right?
No doubt. You got to get in the game, got to rack some heads a little bit and see what comes out on the other end, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what the entrepreneurial revolution is all about, right? As we look at a life cycle of a business. When we start a business, there's always this beginning when it's euphoric, it's fun, it's just, we're going to change the world. And then you get in and it's not so easy. It's a full contact sport. It's those bumpy roads. You are learning through the school of hard knocks. And the most successful entrepreneurs, they figure out a way to develop this breakthrough moment. But there's a lot of battle along the way. I think that's what the entrepreneurial revolution is all about, helping people break through and getting on the other side. John is working through that right now. Kwame is helping entrepreneurs to do this. Thoughts about what's going on right now here in Sacramento?
Well, we're poised for some great stuff. Obviously, we got Kwame over here investing in technology companies. We've got Protxx coming in with some interesting technology, like you said, to save football. But, I think that there is a appetite for small business people to come in and really have the ability to change the game. Having folks like Barry Broom investing in companies, bringing folks in here to really change the shape of Sacramento as a whole. We are a cowbell town, but we're really bringing it back to small business folks.
Yeah, and I think when we think about hometown, I use the term hometown patriotism. It really is about coming together as a community. I call it the power of with. You mentioned Barry Broom, with Kwame, with John from Protxx or another entrepreneur. Anything is possible, and I think that's what. And when I look at our hometown of Sacramento, I see what a lot of people see. We're kind of a government town. We've been that way for several years, and it's served us okay. But I think if we're going to look at your children and their grandchildren and the future generations, we're going to have to bring entrepreneurship to this community. I mean, entrepreneurs are the heroes of American capitalism. They're the ones that roll up their sleeves, they go put their football helmets on or whatever it is, and they go out and try to make some sales and try to build a business and create this opportunity. But it's not easy. We need to celebrate these entrepreneurs and help them to get over that hump. And I think they are the key to economic growth in Sacramento for years to come.
Well, no doubt about that, right? I was having lunch the other day with Eric Vorbeck, a friend of ours,
Yes.
a former baseball coach of mine, big-time mentor, and his big statement is, anything is possible and everything matters. And you just mentioned that anything is possible. How do you think that pertains to the entrepreneurial community?
Well, I think all entrepreneurs, I think all of us have something good about us. We all have greatness inside in some way. And I think a lot of times we don't see that in ourselves. And I think that's what happens, I think, in entrepreneurship is it forces us to sort of dig a little bit deeper. We don't know quite what's inside until you get punched in the mouth and get back up. So I think the beauty of entrepreneurship is it brings out the best in the rest of us. Anybody who puts themselves out there. But I think not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I just need to make that extremely clear. But I think all of us still have greatness inside. And I think when we can dig a little bit deeper to find that greatness, then that's what makes you happy in life, right? It gives you the motivation to carry on. I like to say yes if, right? ... If we look over to my right above my gigantic dry erase board, there's my motto, yes if. It kind of means like anything is possible, right? Yes if you do enough of the little things, anything is possible. And I think that's true with our hometown of Sacramento, right? If enough of us come together and to inspire, to educate, to make the right connections, I do think anything is possible. And I think that bodes well for Sacramento as we see this community coming together.
It almost feels like Sacramento is on the cusp of a breakthrough moment of its own with this entrepreneurial revolution community coming together. I guess a question for you for our audience was, when did you have your first breakthrough moment?
I think my first breakthrough moment in business was probably they happened over and over. I could talk about my newspaper route, which I've done a few times, but so I won't go back that far. But I think it's when you get punched in the mouth and you figure out that you're strong enough to get back up. And I guess if I was to be honest about that, is when I started feeling comfortable in my own skin, right? I own businesses. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, but there's been times in my life when I didn't believe in myself as much as I needed to, and I actually was afraid to get up and lead, right? So my fear of being a vocal leader, I was always more of a lead by example guy, fun guy to hang around, throw a great party. But in business, if you want to lead 50, 100, 200, 300 people, you've really got to come out of your shell, and you've got to figure out a way to communicate your message and the why of what your business is trying to accomplish. And I think there were times in my life when I didn't quite have that confidence, but when I developed the confidence to actually get comfortable in my own skin and jump out and lead, it made all the difference in the world. And I think it's when you I had been punched in the mouth. I had an employee sort of walkout, if you will. I had lost a number of good employees, and after losing those employees, I was like, what am I going to do? And I looked in the mirror and I said, I haven't been leading like I can lead. I know I can do this. Began doing that. Our company got a lot bigger, a lot faster, and we went on to become the largest security company in the United States. So,
yeah, very interesting. And
Security,
you think about technology,
independent security company.
Oh yeah, got to get that finished out there. Well, you think about the technology space and things like that, and breakthrough moments and breakthrough opportunities. How do you feel that social media these days are helping young entrepreneurs or up-and-coming entrepreneurs really find that breakthrough opportunity or breakthrough moment for themselves?
Well, I think number one, with technology and social media, anybody can become an entrepreneur with basically a cell phone and a camera. Anybody can do something. It's easy to build a website today. Technology has made that very possible. But I think the other thing, Kwame mentioned this, is there are opportunities to learn like we had never had before, right? You can turn on a YouTube or social media and you can get inspired by or learn from some of the most successful people in America, where we might have not have had access to that 15, 20 years from now or ago. Now that's so much more possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to finish off the segment here a little bit, we've discovered that you're getting a little bit more popular with Marquee Media Studios. You're having the lady at the Kings game, getting your autograph and things like that. How can we get more Mark Haney? I don't know if there's
Well,
folks
you can come
out
out
there.
and hang out at the Haney Biz Golf Tournament coming up May 25th. You want to go out and swing the golf clubs? Come hang out with me. You can also come to any of our events. Come down to our office in Rocklin. Hang out in Mark Tank. We will talk a little bit about how great we're going to be. Maybe even have a cold beverage, and then we'll go across the street, and I'll hook you up with an Audi Rocklin opportunity as well.
Sounds
A
good.
shout out to a sponsor. When we return, I will share our takeaways and closing thoughts, but really talk a little bit more about a guy that has helped change Sacramento's landscape in entrepreneurship. Join the revolution at HaneyBiz.com, courtesy of Ethan Conrad Properties and Financial Advisors. Steve Financial. This is the Haney Biz Project.
Welcome back to the Marquee Media Studio for Mark's takeaways from today's Haney Biz Project.
Great show today. I'm reminded sitting here in Martech about a guy that was sitting across from me a few days ago. He was working 80 hours a week. He had started this business, and he was running out of time because he had a burn rate. Right, his burn rate was approaching a point where his bank account was almost down to zero. And I asked him how he felt, and it was like, I'm worried. He was legitimately worried. And I think about that when I think about the people that are out there listening in entrepreneurship. It's so easy to drive the business off the cliff, because if you're not making any sales, if you're not getting to profitability to cover that burn rate. And to me, it's all about attitude, though. It's about having this full speed attitude. I think it was helpful for me on the football field. I think it's helpful to go full speed in our businesses. And it made me think about a story about a guy who has really been pivotal in changing Sacramento's landscape. He was a basketball coach, if you will. He was put into this situation that he's not a basketball guy, and he became a basketball coach. And what's he going to do? He's a high-tech guy, and now he's coaching this girls' basketball team. And he decided, what am I going to do? Well, first of all, I'm not going to raise my voice at these little girls, right? 7th grade girls. I'm going to be calm like I am at my software company. But the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to assess my team and try to figure out a way to win. And I know that based upon looking at my team, I might have to do things a little bit differently, a little bit like an entrepreneur style guy might be thinking. Anyway, so he's looking at his team, and he sees smaller girls and maybe even slightly less athletic than the people he was going to be playing against. And he decided to approach the game differently. In basketball, I think we know that typically you go down, you shoot a basket, you score, and then you run back and play defense. Or even if you miss, you just kind of run back and play defense. Well, he said he was going to take advantage of this by having a full-speed attitude kind of approach. And the other rule that is in basketball is when you take the ball out of bounds, right, you have 5 seconds to take the ball out of bounds, and you have 10 seconds to get it across the court over the halfway line. And for some reason, in basketball, people don't full court press throughout the entire game. And, you see that in the NBA. They don't full court press the entire game.
Right.
And he thought to himself, well, if I could bring the full speed attitude to my girls, if I could help them develop a full speed attitude and press the entire game, right, and eliminate the opportunity for the other team to take the ball out of bounds, we could cause havoc. And it's a way that nobody else was doing it, entrepreneurial style, thinking differently. And he did that for an entire season, and he led that team to the national championships. And, he in a way that most people wouldn't think about doing. So that guy, in case you're wondering, is a guy by the name of Vivek Ranadive. Right? He is the owner of the Sacramento Kings. And I think when he invested into the Kings, when he helped save the Kings and keep the Kings here in Sacramento, we can think about what that did for our community, what that did for entrepreneurship. It gave us confidence, right? It gave us an opportunity to go out and chase our dreams because we had a little bit more confidence. We weren't on the sidelines anymore. The Kings staying, well, maybe Sacramento's going to be okay. So just thinking as we sort of wrap this thing up today, Marcus, thinking about all the entrepreneurs out there that are approaching their opportunity here in Sacramento, I think we have to figure out a way to look deep down inside of us. And I think we have to think about ways to go full speed. It's that full speed philosophy. So I love that story of Vivek. I love the stories that we heard today on the show. And just a shout out to everybody out there who is fighting the good fight for entrepreneurship, for freedom, for this way of life. We have such an opportunity here in Sacramento. Another shout out to you, Marcus, for what you've done for our country in fighting for our freedom, and everybody who does what they do so that we can have the American dream here in Sacramento and in America. Never above you, never below you, always by your side.